Hey, what's happening? Jason Priester, Clemson Insider. Kicking it like we do every week, man. Fourth Wednesday in a row, right? I think it's going to be the last one, too. I think we're going to go back to Monday starting next week. Back to regular scheduled programming. I'm not a big fan of doing this thing on Wednesdays. I'm a creature of habit, and I've kind of gotten the habit of doing it on Mondays. Everything's been thrown out of whack this whole month, to be quite honest, man. Um, it's, my days run together as it is. Doing this on Wednesdays makes it even worse. I think this is over now. I think we're going to go back to Mondays. Starting this coming Monday. So be on the lookout for that. If you don't hear anything from me, that means we're going on Monday. Barring some change with my schedule. I think my Legion baseball work is almost complete now. 2 more games. They've had a game every Monday the past month. 2 more games. I got one tomorrow, one next week, and it's not on a Monday. So nobody wants to talk about that, though. That's not what you guys are here for. A lot of things we can dive into tonight. June's not been especially kind to Clemson on the recruiting trail this year, especially when you compare it to last year, the year before last, going back to when Dabo Swinney started hosting summer officials. Those official visit weekends have yielded tons of success the past 2 years. This year, not so much. I don't think it's as bad as it's being made out to be by some, but it's definitely bad from an optics standpoint when you keep on missing on guys. And, particularly when you look at offensive linemen, it just goes to show you that the problems, kind of run a little bit deeper than who was coaching them. A lot different this summer compared to last summer with offensive line, though. Clemson, went into that big official visit weekend with no offensive lineman committed, hit on only just one of the 6 that were there. Looks like they're going to be 1 for 6 again this year, but you had 2 going in. You get 1 that was there, that makes 3. So it's a lot different than it was last year. You wanted to hit on 1 or maybe even 2 of those big-time guys that were there. Let's just say a Hardy Watts or a David Sanders. And, Watts, I think Watts surprised a lot of people when he ended up, the news come out that it was going to be Wisconsin over Michigan and Clemson. I think everybody just assumed it was going to be Michigan. But Watts, and people want to just assume that they throw this big bag of money at him and these guys are just all out chasing money. That guy went to the program who has the best track record of developing offensive linemen and putting them into the NFL or best, Michigan's got the same kind of track record, but it's a new coaching staff. Harbaugh's gone. Even, Clemson doesn't have that. They hired Matt Luke to help get them there. Matt Luke's got some kind of got some track record with him personally, but not with Clemson. Clemson's offensive line play has been, abysmal at times. Go back 3 years, it's been pretty abysmal at times. Those are all hurdles they're still going to have to overcome with some of these guys, man. A lot of times it's not about the money. Some guys it is, but some guys it's not. And with Watts, I've not really been led to believe that money was some big time factor with him. I had, I think, 3 conversations with him this year, and he harps on development. And it was what he talked about. It's what he wanted. And I think he went where he knew he had the best shot of being developed into a potential first-round draft pick. You look at some other guys now, money's going to play a factor. And there's this other assumption out there. Clemson just doesn't offer anything in NIL, yada, yada, yada. That Dabo's totally against it and stuff. And that's just, that's more misinformation. It's just that he's not going to get in bidding wars. And I don't know that they can afford to get into bidding wars if he wanted to. I mean, he probably wouldn't either way, but I just don't know that they could afford it, not based on some things I've heard. Anyways, it's not like they're sitting on mountains of money over there. But yeah, not a very kind month of June for Clemson recruiting. You get just two guys that were at the big official visit weekend, well, so far. Rowan Byrne and Grayson Littleton. They missed on cornerback Zay Thomas, who announced for Florida State Sunday night. And if anybody that watched that commitment thing, you kind of get the sense of, or at least in part of why it was Clemson. I mean, Florida State and not Clemson. The guy's he's a member of the Seminole tribe. I think he's the first ever player to ever commit to Florida State that is a member of the Seminole tribe, and they kind of went all out for him with that commitment ceremony there. I think it was at the Hard Rock Cafe somewhere. I can't remember. It was one of those casinos down there. But man, they went all out, and it was a big kind of shake and dig. And him being the first member of the tribe to commit to him, I think that's a pretty big deal. You missed on Cortez Mills. A guy who went a year between visits, and you absolutely want that guy. You absolutely love to hear some of the things he said coming out of that, first visit he took, or his first official he took, which was to Clemson in early June. I think Mills, there was some other factors in play there with him. One thing in my conversations with Cortez, which was something I thought would help Clemson, was he talked about getting on the field early as a freshman. And, Clemson had proven past 3 years they're not afraid to play freshman wide receivers. And now here he is. He's a member of a class at Oklahoma that's now got 5 wide receivers committed. So, again, I think there ended up being some other factors in play there, but not that, you look at what Brent Venables is doing over there in Norman, and he's kind of trying to build something similar to what, Dabo's got here at Clemson. He's also got more money to work with. And he's not afraid to get in the bidding wars. Doesn't have a problem getting in the bidding wars. Have a shot at the wide receiver committee tomorrow. You know what? Samari Reed was originally supposed to announce today. I guess he's going to do it tomorrow now. I have not been able to find out anything about this kid. Nothing. I don't know if it's going to be Clemson, West Virginia, or one of the other, 5 finalists that he's got. I have no idea. He doesn't speak. He doesn't do much talking when it comes to media. I have not been able to talk to anybody that knows anything about him. I have no idea which way he's leaning. I do think Clemson would still take him and Dylan Alford. I think that's my opinion. I don't know that for a fact. They had 3 offers out there: Cortez Mills, Samari Reed, and then they offered Dylan Alford last week. And a lot of people just kind of assumed when they offered Alford that it was because they thought they were going to miss on Mills, and that's not the case. The Alford, offer been in the works since he worked out at camp first week in June, and Clemson definitely didn't know they were going to miss on Mills back then. I don't think they really knew until late last week after that offer went out, or maybe even over the weekend. But I think that the goal was, the way I read it anyways, reading between the lines of some of the things I was told, the goal was to hit on 2 of those guys. And I do think they had a preference for which 2. But I still think they'd probably take both. Not saying they'll get both. I think they probably would take both. And I might end up being wrong about that. Maybe once they missed on Mills, they decided they just want to take one. And I think if they end up taking just one, it'll be the Alford kid. He's supposed to be here for the cookout later this month. Have no idea when he's going to announce again. Most of you that follow recruiting probably already know he was committed to Ole Miss for a while. decommitted today. He got his Clemson offer. He announced his Clemson offer like 30 minutes later. Told me that, his plan, when I talked to him last week, told me his plan was to, have his decision made before August. So you got him coming to the cookout late July, which is right before the flip of the calendar. So if they only take one of those two, I would look for it to be Alfred. I have no idea whether they backed off from Reed. I don't think they have. Or whether they've told him he doesn't have a spot anymore. I don't think they have. I don't think they would. I think they'd take both, that they could get them. I know for sure they'd have taken both Mills and Alfred. But again, I have not been able to find out anything about Samari Reed. I can't tell you which way he's leaning, man. I wish I could. Nolan Noraki. No, Noraki was committed to Michigan when Eric Bakich was the coach there. So unlike all these other guys that have transferred from Clemson to South Carolina, those were all Monty guys. Noraki's not a Monty guy. So that one, in my eyes, hits a little bit different. Because with the others, them being recruited by Monty, some of them haven't played for Monty, you can kind of see the reasoning. You don't like it. You don't like to see any players go to your rival, but you can kind of see the reasoning and the logic behind it. This one feels a little different to me. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that South Carolina was tampering or anything like that, because I've heard nothing of the sort. So, but I do know there was a ton of tampering going on up there at the Cape this summer, where he's been playing summer ball. And this is just me, speculating. I'm not saying this is how it played out. I'm just saying this is a scenario I can see it. This is one scenario I can see. Some guys see all this tampering going on and see this guy beside him, this guy on the other side of him getting offered this, getting offered that. Say, hey, man, if I jump in the portal, I can get offered something too. And maybe that's how things played out. You kind of look at the roster next year. I don't know that Noraki was guaranteed to play anywhere. And I'm a big Noraki guy. He was my candidate for breakout player of the year this year, and he was on fire, coming out the gates till he cut his hand. Then he went into an extended slump that he didn't really start to come out of right at the end of the season. I think, we talking about a kid that had a 9.5 perfect grade, perfect game grade coming out of high school. So highly touted, high ceiling. But when I look at what Clemson's done in the portal, I don't know that there's a spot there. I don't know where he was going to fit in outside of DH. He's not so far he's not proven to be the best, this great fielder. And that was to me, one of Clemson's biggest weaknesses last year was their fielding on the infield. Their fielding percentage was not where it needed to be. And you look at the guys that Bakich has added through the portal so far, and all of them were excellent fielders. One of them was the WAC Defensive Player of the Year at shortstop last year. You always hate to see one of your guys go to the rival. But at the same time, if you look at the departures and you compare them with what's coming in, all of that production has been made up for and then some. And so has the potential, because a couple of those guys have multiple years of eligibility left. I think Clemson has gotten better, since the portal window opened and when it closes tonight at midnight. I think Clemson's gotten better when you factor in who left and who's coming in. Wisconsin coaching in his second year, no proven offense. I'm not familiar. I know Fickle's not had that job long. I don't even know who the line coach is there. Those are two programs that have consistently put offensive linemen into the league. When I think of Wisconsin, I think of I formation football, big nasties up front, paving the way for some of those running backs. And you don't get that same thing from Clemson. All I'm saying is I have not heard one peep about Hardy Watts being out looking for the biggest bag of money he could find. His biggest thing was development, and he was always going to go where he felt like he could be developed the best. And, for a long time, most people kind of assumed it was going to be Michigan. Then all of a sudden, late last week, early last weekend, you start seeing all this chatter for Wisconsin, and which was a little surprising to me because I was the same way. I was kind of leaning toward Michigan too. Wisconsin's got a great track record for developing offensive linemen despite the new staff. Clemson's got a new offensive line coach and no track record. So that's kind of more the point I was making. Not to mention the fact these offensive linemen, unless you're a guy like David Sanders, they're not commanding these big money deals coming out of high school the way some people, just kind of assume. And I don't even think, a lot of people think David Sanders or a guy like David Sanders is, going to ink some 7-figure deal coming out of high school. And I don't believe that. I don't believe nobody's paying an offensive lineman 7 figures coming out of high school. Not based on some of the things I've heard and some of the figures I've seen and stuff. I just don't know that happens. If it does, it doesn't happen very often. So I mean, it's not like somebody's out here paying, let's say a guy like Hardy Watts, who's a top 200 guy, and depending on what service you look at, he's ranked somewhere between 10 and 15 among interior offensive linemen. Not all offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen. So I mean, I just don't know that those guys are commanding these big money deals when these mid and lower 4-star guys, even high 4-star guys, offensive linemen anyways, because they're so hard to evaluate. It's probably by far the hardest position to evaluate, and just don't know what you got until they get there. You can watch them work out all you want, but just don't know how it's going to translate until they get there. How many more commits? I think you end up with somewhere probably 18 to 21. I actually did a story today on what's left for this class. Right there, it should be on the front page there, Clemson Insider. I can't remember it all off the top of my head, but I think Clemson's still going to try to add one more offensive lineman, and that's assuming they miss on Sanders. Obviously, if they were to pull some shocking upset and land Sanders, they'd be done. But I don't think that's going to happen. And you probably won't see no movement on that for a while because there's no other guys out there uncommitted that have an offer at this point. They'll probably, I don't know, you might not see no movement till we get into the season. I don't. Thinking back to camp, I was actually trying to think about this today. Thinking back to camp, I don't remember any 2025 offensive linemen that came through that were so good that they'd warrant an offer right now, today, or before the season starts. They might have some guys they've got on the radar who maybe they want to see, play 3, 4, 5 games into their senior season and then see where they're at. Still a long time to December. But I do still think they'll try to add an offensive lineman. We already talked about receiver, done at quarterback, done at running back, done at tight end. Defensive line, you still got Bryce Davis out there. Most people think he's going to go to Georgia. The other defensive tackle, the 5-star kid, his name escapes me right now. Clemson's got 2 defensive ends, 1 defensive tackle. The ends are Reed Watford, Isaiah Campbell. The tackles are Maury Adams. But Campbell's a guy, he's already 265, something like that, man. He could probably play inside, outside, wherever you want him to. When they first started recruiting him, I kind of assumed they were going to recruit him as defensive tackle, but I talked to him after his commitment. He said, nah, they got him penciled in a defensive end for right now anyway. So, but just throwing that out there, I think that's an option because he's played both inside and outside of high school, obviously. But do think they'll probably try to add another tackle if they can find one they like. I still think the number at linebackers 1, don't have one at all yet. Somebody's asking about Kamar Archie. I actually tried to reach out to him yesterday and I never heard back. Looks like he's headed for a July decision. And if they're only going to take the 1, I imagine it's first come, first serve. I take that back. If they're only going to take the 1, they're probably going to wait to see what Archie does. And if they miss on him, then move on to Logan Anderson, who has already told me he's coming to the cookout. So Anderson's a guy that went and killed it on the camp circuit this summer. Logan Anderson killed it at Clemson's camp. They after he worked out at the morning session, they told him to don't bother working out in the afternoon session. They wanted to see him inside the facility, saying he ended up coming away with an offer. Those are your 2 candidates there. If you ask me about which way he's leaning, if I had to say right now, I might lean a little bit towards Rutgers, to be quite honest. Hard to believe I'm saying that. 3 weeks ago, I would have never imagined saying that, but I think he's got some buddies that play up there or, that are going to be playing up there. He's from up that way. Might be throwing around a little bit more money than Clemson is at this point. I think Clemson's probably done at corner with just Littleton. Obviously, they would have taken Thomas had he decided to come, but I'd be surprised if they, target anybody else. Safety, you already got one on board, and Tay Harrison still waiting on Jordan Young, so obviously they want to add one more there. So I think you end up somewhere between 18, 21, probably on the lower end of that. I already got 13 committed, and probably fixing to get their first commit of the 2026 class here over the next few days. That's right, everybody. If you have not done so, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We would very much appreciate it. Will Taylor has not made any official announcement and probably won't until it might be after the draft, which is later this month. 2 months ago, I would have said he is definitely gone. Then he gets hurt. Things kind of, maybe change a little bit the way he's viewing things. I still think the possibility of him coming back is probably a lot lower than the chances of him leaving. But I do think there's at least a possibility of it happening. Probably just going to depend on what happens during the draft and where he goes and who takes him and, what the offer is and those kind of things. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility at this point. That's just based on gut. Nothing substantial or anything. Just we'll see how it plays out. No pictures. Does that worry you? Nothing. It doesn't worry me, no. If you're Clemson, obviously you'd like to have added an arm, and just because the portal window closes tonight doesn't mean you can't still add, so they might not still be done. I know they wanted to add at least one. I know they've targeted a couple of guys, and they've ended up going elsewhere. Um, still one more name I'm monitoring that I'm not going to say who it is, but he's still out there, hasn't made any decisions yet. So I mean, it's not over. But let's say you come away with none. Am I worried? Not really. But that's just me because I don't view it that way anymore. I'm not that emotionally attached. Obviously, you'd like to have added an arm, maybe two, but I also think Clemson's recruiting pretty well. I think they've got one of the best pitching coaches in the country, and I don't think it's a guarantee that Tristan Smith leaves. I don't think it's a guarantee that Austin Gordon leaves. So you just have to wait and see what happens. And we're getting out of the ACC announcement this month or August. I have maintained all along I do not think Clemson's out of the ACC in time for the 2025 season. So, no, I do not foresee any announcement coming this month or next month. I don't see, I might be wrong on this. I'm not very plugged into down there in Tallahassee with Florida State. I'll be surprised if they announce time to get out for 2025. Wouldn't be shocked, but I'd be a little bit surprised. Although at the same time, I don't think Clemson and Florida State are as attached at the hip as, some people make it out to be. Doesn't mean they won't end up in the same spot 2-3 years from now, but I could see a scenario in which they end up in different spots. But I do think we're not deep enough into this thing yet to be. I just don't know that I see the ACC being willing to settle just yet. I would probably eyeball the summer of 2025 for that's the next deadline. There's a deadline. I forget what it is. It's in August. You got to, file before August, whatever, if you want to lead the conference in time for the 2025 season. And then the next deadline will be next August. I just don't see it happening before that. I still think 2026. I do, I still maintain it's going to happen. Just don't think it's going to happen that fast. It's hard for me to believe Clemson ain't got the money. I'm thinking they just won't spend the money. They don't mind spending it at the coach. See, there's this part of what I'm talking about. I don't think a lot of people actually get how NIL works. You cannot use money. The money that you use on coaches, you cannot use that on NIL. It doesn't work that way. So fans have to specifically donate their money to be used for NIL and nothing else. It has to go to the 110 collective. You can't donate to IPTAY and think they're going to use part of that money on NIL. That's just not how it works yet. Not yet, anyways. We're fixing to move into an era where we're going to have a salary cap and you're going to be able to share television revenue with players, but we're not there yet. If fans aren't writing the check to the collectives, then there's, that they're just not. I mean, and I'm not, nowhere have I said they don't have any money. I'm saying they don't have as much as people think they have. They don't have as much as I thought they had 2 years ago. My eyes have kind of been open to that over the past 6-12 months. It's just two different pools of money. And you can't just, the NIL money can't come directly from the school. It has to come from fan donations specifically tailored for NIL. And I don't think Clemson's done the best job of getting the message out there of how important NIL is, particularly for football. I think there's a lot of things that have led to that. I know, like when it comes to baseball, Clemson's got hardly no money to work with, and I know that. Um, Basketball is a little bit different. Brownell's got some. He's got pretty good NIL support over there, and it's allowed him to have a lot of success in the portal. Eric Bakich is having the success he's having in the portal, despite having limited money to work with. I'm not sure how he's pulled off some of this magic he's been able to work. But you can't use the money that you would pay coaches to pay players through NIL. It just doesn't work that way. Have you ever considered becoming a Gamecock? You know, it almost feels like, particularly with baseball, man, that the Gamecocks almost want to become like Clemson 2.0, man. They just keep taking all the players that transfer out, and most of them not in the plans for next year. But to answer your question is 100% no. Have you ever considered becoming a Clemson Tiger? Any of you guys need some the services of a litigator? Etheridge is your man. Look him up. He's a pretty damn fine lawyer for a Gamecock fan. Keep hearing his family loves Clemson. Is he Georgia? I can't tell you for sure where he's going. I think Georgia's kind of always been perceived as the favorite. I do think that it's close enough to where he's got a decision to make. I don't know that it's decided yet. But there's been a lot of time. There's been a lot of situations over the years where you get parents that love Clemson and they still end up going elsewhere. Well, I'm not going to name any names, but we've seen it happen before. Heck, we just saw it happen this weekend a couple of times. So that's not always the be all end all. It helps. It helps, particularly when Mama likes it. It's not hard to think Clemson doesn't have the money to match up with the top dogs. Number of alumni donors, it's a much smaller alumni base when you compare it to some of the big boy football programs they're competing with. Absolutely, some of these flagship state universities, heck, even when you compare it to South Carolina, it's a smaller alumni base. So yeah, and to me, I think it goes deeper than that, though. I think Clemson's. I think Clemson's NIL stuff could probably be in a little bit better shape than it is. If you had the right people in, I think there are things they can do to make it a little stronger. Let's put it that way. Bakich have the tools in place to get us to Omaha. We'll have to see who leaves for the draft. Like I said, I know they would have liked to have added an arm or maybe even two through the portal. Hard to add pitching when you don't have a whole lot of money to work with. I think that's been one of the biggest hangups there. But He's also recruited well. Just you had Canuck, who was a freshman last year. Um, you you got to hope you can get Darden back on the right path, but you got to see who's going to make it to campus from the signing class too, and then I'll be better able to answer that. There's a pitcher they've got. If he ends up coming to campus, all of a sudden your pitching staff looks a little bit better, particularly if you get a guy like Austin Gordon back. So let's get past the draft and then we can revisit. I have a better idea, but obviously to me that's going to be the last hurdle. There is kind of shoring up some of that pitching. I 100% believe you got the right guys in the right spots, including Jimmy Ballinger. It's just, I think that under the previous staff, I think there was such a lack of development with a lot of those guys. I think there was some missed evaluations too, that it's just something that's going to take a little bit of time to fix, especially when you're limited NIL wise. Now, if the 11.7 goes away, the way we are being told that it's going to go away, that is going to help Clemson tremendously. Because then all of a sudden you can offer every guy on the roster a full scholarship, and you don't have to, worry about raising so much NIL money to offset what they're going to have to pay out of pocket because they only got a, partial scholarship. You don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm not saying it's the be-all, end-all fix, but it's going to help tremendously. But I'm also saying I just don't know that the pitching's an overnight fix under the current circumstances. Given O-line is so difficult to project out of high school, why not hold a Scully till January versus signing a 3-star? Who says they're going to sign a 3-star developmental player? I don't know. That's what they're going to do. I don't even know that they're going to take another one, period. I kind of lean towards it thinking they will. But if you look what's on the roster right now, the answer to your question is because Dabo doesn't think he needs a starter. And you're not going to go – they tried to go get some depth guys, offensive linemen out of the portal last year, and it didn't go very well. If he doesn't think he needs a starter, he's not going to go get somebody. Now, we might be sitting here in December and thinking, they might need, a starter or two for 2025. I don't know about that yet. We'll have to just wait until we get there. But as for this season, they didn't think they needed a starter. And if you don't think you need a starter, you're probably not going to land a portal guy because they want to start. That's exactly how they missed on the kid that went to Georgia Tech. He wanted to start. He was first string coming out of spring there at Georgia Tech, and he was not going to compete for a start spot at Clemson. None of those, I fully believe none of those offensive linemen they targeted were capable of starting for Clemson this year. I don't think it's the best portal philosophy because those guys are in there because they want to play, not because they want to go somewhere and finish being developed. And that's the kind of guys Clemson we're looking for, and I just don't think you're going to find very many like that. Does Rutgers have more money because of being in the Big Ten? NIL money comes from donations, not through television money. Coaches cannot donate to NIL. If I'm remembering the rules correctly, I don't think coaches can donate straight into NIL. Not by rule anyways. Yeah, several D1 baseball guys have Clemson projected to be in the College World Series last year. The most notable guy over there, however, does not. Aaron Fitt. He was one of the. He might have been the only one. I can't remember. He might have been the only one. And what the thing I saw, he might have been the only one that didn't have Clemson in Omaha last year. You gotta love the lineup. The questions, are going to be about the pitching, and I can't answer what the rotation is going to look like if no portal pitcher. You got to wait until after the draft takes place, see who gets to campus, see who doesn't. You never know if there's a guy like Canuck that's going to shine as a freshman, because I would not have betted on Canuck starting as a freshman. Not the way he did. It just doesn't happen very often. So I can't answer that yet. Maybe wrong. I'm thinking no part of money given to collectors is tax deductible. No, I don't think you can write it off. You used to be able to write off those kind of things, but a couple of years ago they changed that. I don't think you can anymore. And yeah, I think that probably does affect how much people donate and who does donate. Guarantee it does. Name names. I'm not sure what names you want me to name. You have to be more specific. Clemson baseball should tap into its MLB guys. There's cash there. This is a conversation I've had with more than one person over the past few months. I have no idea how much former players have pitched in towards NIL. Based on some of the numbers I've heard, it can't be very much, but I do want to make it clear that that Spencer Strider just donated a whole thing worth of pitching stuff there. Man, they've got this whole golly, I can't even remember what you call it off the top of my head, but so I don't want to make it sound like none of the pitchers are giving back, because I don't know who gives what. Strider just had a whole golly, what is it called, man? He just did something, man. I don't know that he gave straight cash, but it was to build something to help the pitchers develop. Golly, there's a word I'm looking for, and I cannot think of it. Why are we losing 2 players to USC every year and 1 player to the team we play in the tournament? I can't. There's no one specific reason, man. But if you're a Clemson fan and you see South Carolina, kind of taking guys that are leaving from your program that aren't really going to factor in next year, and really Naraki's the only guy. And some might point to Barlow, but Barlow's a guy who was a midweek starter, ended up going to the bullpen, wants to be a weekend guy, and ends up at Florida. I don't know that they told him they were going to give him a shot at pitching on the weekends down there, but he was not going to be in the rotation for Clemson next year. And I touched on Naraki a minute ago. When you kind of look at some of the other additions, I don't know where he fits in defensively. I think he's got an extremely high ceiling, but I think he's got some work to do with when it comes to the glove. He's so far he's not a guy that showed that he's got a lot of pop in his bat. He's a guy that is going to hit more for average than anything, I think. But when you look at the rest of the guys, those are guys that aren't really they're not necessarily projected to be everyday players for you next year. And now South Carolina's taking them to maybe be everyday players for them. Obviously, you don't want to see, any of your players transfer to the rival. I get it. All those guys that have transferred to South Carolina, all Monty guys until Naraki. His is a little different. But I mean, I understand that aspect of it, but when you look at it from the other side, man, I don't get it, man. I don't get why a team like South Carolina are taking guys from Clemson's roster. A guy like Nathan Hall, he a lot of opportunities as a freshman, didn't produce much. Handful of opportunities early as a sophomore, didn't produce. Haven't seen him since. Just couldn't crack his way into the lineup. Same thing with Jonathan French the year before or last year, or the year before last, whenever it was. Same thing with Dylan Brewer, who had problems staying in the starting lineup and probably wasn't going to be once the coaching change was made. I mean, at that time when he left, there was no way to know Cam Canarella was going to come in and take over in center because Canarella had never played outfield in his life before he got to Clemson. But I'm just not when they're taking guys that aren't really factoring into your future plans, then I don't know that I'd worry about it too much. Again, I think Rocky's the kind of the exception. I guess you could throw Barlow in there too because he'd probably be a piece in that bullpen next year. Don't think he was going to be a starter. But I don't know where Rocky fit in the field. Maybe at third base. I don't know. I don't know if I don't have the answers to those questions. Only Eric Backus does. But again, he's a guy that struggled to stay healthy this year. 2 different times he got hurt and was out. One time for an extended period. And I sound like I'm ragging on Rocky. I think a lot. I think he's got a lot of upside. I think that guy's going to be a heck of a ball player. I thought he was going to have a breakout season this year, and I still think he probably would have had he not gotten hurt. But I do think he's still got some work to do on his defensive skills, and I still think Clemson upgraded. As far as players ending up with the teams that eliminated Clemson, I think that's more of a coincidence than anything. With Amick, and I'm not diving into that stuff, man, but I'm not even going to touch that. I don't think there was, all this dirty tampering going on with Billy Barlow while Florida was in town that weekend. I know a lot of people assumed that, but I'm not sure there was. Mm-hmm. Seems we are struggling in recruiting with the spots we lack the most in development. Do you think NIL is the bigger issue or proven to be? I think NIL plays a big role for the big name quarterbacks. If Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence were coming out of high school right now, I'm not that confident Clemson lands them in this landscape. Those guys probably end up going somewhere else. Clemson's also got a different guy running their offense and coaching their quarterbacks. And, I think he kind of likes what he likes. And, he liked Billy Keibert right off the bat. And that's who he wanted. And he went and got him. Same thing with Tate Reynolds. He liked him right off the bat. That's the guy they want in this class. And if you look at Tate Reynolds, he is a guy that's only been playing football for 2 years. Still very raw. His words, not mine. His words. He's not even. He is yet to even really hire a QB coach to work with him. That's how new he is. He's been a baseball guy. I don't know just kind of reading between the lines in the conversation I had with him, I don't know that he expected to get all this quarterback attention that he's gotten, over the past several months. He was an Arizona baseball commit. He is no longer, but he was. And he garnered up a lot of legit interest over the summer. He went through at A&M. He told me that, A&M and Clemson were the two schools that he was hearing from the most. He went through it from Miami, one other school too. I forget who it was. But Garrett Riley, there's something Riley saw in him that he liked, and I thought Tate killed it at camp. But there's only so much you can tell from a camp workout. Is you're throwing against airs, drills and stuff. But I mean, he was accurate with the football. He's got a cannon for an arm, and he moves around really well. He looks very mobile. And he's a big dude. He's a big, strong dude. He's like 6'2", 6'3". He looks like he weighs about 220, 225. I mean, if you look at his legs, you can tell he has not missed a leg day in the gym in a long time. And I think Garrett Riley's kind of got a type, and you've seen it with Blake Hebert, seeing it with Tate Reynolds, bigger guys who can move around, big arms. Kind of polar opposite of what we see with Klubnik. He's a smaller guy, doesn't have the strongest of arms. Was not quite as mobile as probably many thought he was going to be at this level. I think a lot of that's got to do with not being strong enough to run through some tackles. But if you look at, it's going to be interesting to see Reynolds' trajectory over the next 2 years. And see how he develops as a junior this year, as a senior next year, and see where he is coming out of high school. Because if you're Garrett Riley, there's no way you can sit here right now today and say, man, that guy's going to come in and start for me in 2026. If you're sitting here today, you're saying, yeah, if I can get that guy to come play for me, maybe I can have him ready to play by 2027. So that means you've got to have somebody else ready to play, between Vizina, Hebert, somebody. But I'm kind of getting off in the weeds here. But yeah, I think NIL plays a big part when you start talking about the top 5, top 10 quarterbacks, especially for the top 5 and top 2 or 3. I think the money goes before you get in the pecking order, the money starts dropping off, and probably pretty substantially. I don't know that it plays so much of a factor with these offensive linemen, not most of them anyways, because I don't think offensive linemen are commanding these big, huge money deals coming out of school. I mean, I'm not saying none of them are getting them, but just generally speaking, I don't think most are getting them. I think with them, it's more about development. And Clemson doesn't have the best track record. You took a step last year in bringing in Matt Luke and trying to address that. And if you go back the last 2-3 years, Clemson offensive line play has not been very good. I think that plays a part in it. The fact that Clemson's lost 3 games, 4 games the past 3 years plays a part in it. I think there's multiple things that go into it, and you miss on this guy for one reason, you might miss on the next guy for a totally different reason. I just think there's a lot of things that factor into it when it comes to the offensive lineman. Don't see NIL lasting too much longer. Have heard several podcasts talking about donor fatigue. Also, no contracts. Who knows if a player will stay or go? I don't know that NIL is going away. Even once we get to the revenue share, and NIL is going to be a thing. Donor fatigue is real. I do think, there's the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. And donor fatigue is going to hurt a school like Clemson far more than it would a school like Texas A&M, or, somebody with a big alumni base or a big, rich alumni base. But I mean, I haven't talked to people that work with collectives. Donor fatigue is absolutely real, but that doesn't mean it's going away. that's to me that's going to be the key once we get to the revenue sharing, because players are going to be able to draw salaries and schools are still going to be able to pay NIL through the collectives, because the collectives aren't going away. And it's going to be I'm very curious to see, how Clemson maneuvers in that world. Pitching lab equipment. That is what I was looking for. Lab. That is the word I was looking for. Thank you. My game plan for week 1 against Georgia, does Clemson have a better shot than most around the country are giving them? I think it's going to be hard for Clemson to win this game. That's not really. I'm not really. I think there's a lot of unknowns for Clemson this year. Is Clemson going to take that, step that they need him to take, and it needs to be a big one? Is Matt Luke going to have the impact on the offensive line that he needs to have? Can those wide receivers stay healthy finally? There's some unknowns out there. One thing I think I do know, Georgia's on a whole different level from probably everybody else. They have recruited so well, going back the past few years. I have a hard time seeing Clemson with their defense getting their doors blown off. I can see, maybe that defense wearing down in that second half. I can see a scenario where the defense wears down in the second half because the offense can't do squat. They've stayed on the field the whole time. And maybe Georgia pulls away late. But I don't see a scenario where Georgia comes out from the opening whistle and just toe drags Clemson. I think Clemson's defense is too good. If you're asking me how I game plan against them, I'm not sure. You got to be able to move the chains. You got to be able to eat some clock and keep Georgia off the field and try to wear that defensive down. You're not gonna rush for 200 yards against them, but you probably need to rush for 75, 80, 85, upwards of 100, even if it takes you 35 attempts, which means your defense has to hold their offense, even if their defense is holding your offense. That defensive line is so good. I would probably try to attack the perimeter. I think Clemson's got more speed, at wide receiver now than they did 2 years ago when they played. Guys like Tyler Brown, Wesco, TJ Moore is a lot faster than a lot of people realize. I think, Troy Stellato is supposed to be a speedster, even though I didn't think he really looked like it last year. I don't know if that was, him being a little banged up or what. I think Clemson's got to be able to attack the perimeter of that defense and have a little bit of success, and they've got to be able to stay on the field offensively. You can't be having a bunch of 3 and outs. You got to go on a couple of extended drives and give your defense a shot. For me, the biggest question is, can Clemson hit them for a couple of chunk plays? If they can do that, I think they'd have a puncher's chance. If they show no ability to push the ball down the field, it's going to be easy for Georgia to just kind of, play to their strengths, and I think they'll have a lot more success. Clemson's got to be able to show that they can push the ball, or at least pick up a chunk play or two. At least prove that the threat is there. Klubnik and those receivers have to make a couple of big plays down the field, and then that'll open some stuff up on the perimeter, and Georgia won't be able to play so close up on the line and suffocate everybody. But if they can get some things to go their way, I'd give them a puncher's chance. Again, I don't think they're going to get toe dragged, but I could definitely see I could see a scenario where Clemson's offense is so they hold Clemson's offense down to the point where the defense is on the field most of the game and they wear down. You know, late third quarter, early fourth quarter, whenever it may be. But now I am still a month away from having to make an official prediction for that thing. I don't have to do that until after fall camp. Let's see where we are then. Crichton was a surprise after Taylor got injured. Yeah, I think Crichton's got a high ceiling. He's a tall kid. He was a guy I thought maybe would come in last season, maybe 10 pounds heavier than he was as a freshman. Didn't play out that way, but you got to think he's probably right where they want him. Not sure he's a guy that's ever going to have a bunch of pop in his bat, but he was very highly, like Rocky was. He was very highly touted coming out of high school. It's going to be interesting to see where Crichton fits in next year, because I think I'm sure it's probably going to be in one of those corner outfield spots, unless Will Taylor does decide to come back. Then what do you do with Crichton? You've got first base locked up, second base locked up, shortstop, third base. It just depends on who you want to put where. You got more than one catcher. I mean, the infield's settled. So, I mean, where Crichton will probably have to I imagine he'll be in one of those probably – he can play either corner outfield spot, so you could probably put him in either one. But it gets interesting if Will Taylor does decide to come back. Yes, Riley recruits quarterbacks very differently than they have in the past. Absolutely. I think it was me and David Hood talking about this at camp. You just look at Tate Reynolds and he just looks like that guy Garrett Riley wants a quarterback. Just the body type, the big arm. There's a lot of things I like about him. He's just raw, man. He's just raw right now, and it's easy to lose sight of the fact that he's still got 2 more years of developing in high school. Can there be a contract for multiple years with NIL, or could it be broken? You could. I know that some collectives had just last season had started writing out, NIL contracts to read to where, the player has to play in the bowl game, yada yada yada. Those things can easily be broken, man. I mean, what's going to be interesting to watch play out? We'll see if a school ever decides to take action against a player for not living up to his NIL deal, not living up to the stipulations in that deal. Say a guy says, sign something saying, yeah, I'll play in the bowl game, but then he leaves before the bowl game sits out or whatever. Or you get a guy that gets hurt, and let's say he gets hurt week 2 and he's out for 6, 7, 8 weeks. Medical team clears him for action with 2 weeks left in the season, but he says, nah, I'm not ready to go back yet. What you gonna do? I think those things are happening right before our very eyes. If Samari Reed goes elsewhere, does Clemson expand the board? No, I don't think so. Because for a long time, I thought the number was just going to be 2. I didn't even realize until camp that Clemson would take 3. But if you miss on Reed and then get Alfred, I think they're done. Do you believe rumors of July 12th being the day Clemson getting out of the ACC? I do not. No. They've got a court date that day, if I'm remembering that right. I do not. I will be very surprised if Clemson announces any type of move this summer. I still think it's 2026 at the earliest. You probably want to wait and see what ESPN is going to do with that option they got to pick up on the television deal next year, and then go from there. If you have not hit that subscribe button, please do. We would very much appreciate it. Like the videos. And a reminder, we are back on Mondays next week. No more of this Wednesday stuff, at least not for a while. I'm pretty sure of that anyways. I'm 99.9% sure going to be back Monday. If you don't hear anything from me, see it on Twitter, then it'll be Monday. If I have to do it again on Wednesday, I'll pin it to the top of my Twitter page. And yes, there are 3 pair of shades floating around out there that are still unaccounted for. And with that, I will bid you guys farewell. Appreciate everybody tuning in. See y'all next time.